Hey everybody, it's Misty here, and I'm gonna show you a short project today. If you would like to make last minute art projects, or maybe watercolor gift cards if you'd like, if you don't have any cards to give relatives, and well, the winter weather is gonna get really bad, so maybe you can't get out there and get cards. So if you have watercolor and some crayons, maybe markers or pens and pencils, you can make something quick to gift someone in your family. Here's an example here. And this one we used a little bit of salt to create a fun texture effect. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to choose what I want to draw my ornament on. I am going to use watercolor paper. You can find this at Walmart, Joann Fabrics, Michaels, Hobby Lobby. Sometimes they even have it at Meyer. Not too expensive. You could also use a heavy-duty construction paper as well. Sulfite paper is great. You can find that on Amazon for $5.99 a packet for 50. But I am using just plain old watercolor today because that's what I have. I'm gonna start with a pencil. So I have my handy dandy Saginaw Valley State University pencil here. And I'm gonna decide what shape I want my ornament. So I went with a circle the first time. If you cannot draw a circle, a lot of people say, oh, I can't even draw a straight line. Guess what? You have sour cream containers at home, maybe a tin can, even your salt container. You can trace around that, get a circle shape. Paper plates, hand sanitizer bottle, anything circular if you want a circle shape. If you want a square shape, you can do a square shape, or you can do, whatever shape of ornament your heart desires. So, first thing I'm gonna do is I want that circle shape. I'm going to trace my lid. If you're a kid doing this, you can do a circle. If you're an adult, you can do any shape that you want. If you want to get more complicated, make this more fine art, you can add, little, let's see, we're gonna add first up here our little ornament attachment. I'm gonna do 2 straight lines just like that. Doesn't have to be perfect. And we're gonna draw that curved line right there to make the top of our ornament. If you want to, you can erase, add different elements to it. So I'm gonna keep this line here. Maybe I'll add that little ruffled edge that we see on some of them. Add a little decoration to it. You can erase if you need to. And maybe my ornament has a fancy bottom to it, so I'm gonna do 2 curved lines here. And I'm gonna connect them at a curve. And it's okay if you don't do it the first time. Again, you can erase. Sometimes watercolor paper can be unforgiving when you are erasing, so try to draw light. I am a heavy drawer, so unfortunately mine's gonna be dark. And that's okay, we're gonna go with it. Gonna add another little decorative bottom here. Maybe it comes to a point like that. Now up here, we're gonna do our little hanging wire. So we're gonna start from the top, go down, loop around and back up. Now I'm gonna do 2 curved lines this way and some curved lines this way. just like that. And I might adjust this just a little bit. You can always add elements to hide some things that we've done. Make it a little bit pointier. One thing you can do is you can outline it in permanent marker if you want to. This one I used crayon, so you can see the way it differs from maybe say outlining at the end with watercolor. Use what you got. And now the permanent marker, depending on what brand you have, won't bleed, so if it gets wet, that's okay. If you don't like this, you can skip this step. Again, this doesn't have to be perfect. You're making this with love, and your loved ones will appreciate it. Sometimes the best elements of our art are the imperfections. I'm just going to fill these in. You don't have to. All right, so now if you have oil pastels, you want to use oil pastels, you can do that. I'm going to use a crayon. And the trick to this technique right here is using enough pressure to put the crayon down into the grooves of the paper. As you can see here, I didn't apply enough pressure over here, but it still has a cool effect. And it's weird because we're using white on white paper. You could also do this with colors, crayons, any kind of wax. Like I said, you can use oil pastels if you want to get a little bit fancier. You can turn your paper every which way to kind of see where you've laid down your white. I'm doing swirls. You could do all sorts of different colors or shapes. Again, this is your project. You do how you want to do it. Now you're applying enough pressure to lay down that white, but also not break your crayon. You don't want to break your crayon. If you break your crayon, that's okay. You can still use it. Take the paper off. You can still use that baby. Okay, so I think I've got pretty much all of it covered here. It's hard to tell. That's okay. To keep your paper from curling, you could even tape this down with painter's tape, a non-sticky tape of some kind, or packing tape. You just put it on your shirt, make sure it's kind of you know, pressed on a little bit, and peel it off, and that'll take the stickiness away from your tape. Because if you have it sticky, it's going to peel off your paper, and you don't want to do that. So the most important thing with watercolor is always having clean water. Now mine is purple, generally you should have one clean water and one water to wash your brush with. I do not have that today, but I am putting down a very light coat of water with my brush. I'm not pushing too hard. I just want to lightly put a layer of water with my brush on the paper, wetting my paper so that my paint is going to flow and kind of create kind of like that tie-dye effect you saw earlier on this one right here. All right, so I like the kind of teal color, so I'm going to take a little bit of my blue, put it on my palette. To the side, you could use a paper plate, you could use a foam plate, you could use a plastic lid, whatever you have. It doesn't have to be an expensive paint palette. I'm going to go in with green and mix these two together on my palette to create kind of like a tealy color. A little bit of blue. There we go. All right, so now I'm going to go in, and you can see how that's flowing through my water. I'm going to lightly brush it in. I do not want to scrub because I don't want to take the wax away, because that's where we're getting our resist from, because oil and water don't mix. So we get this fun oil resist technique. I'm going to move it through here. So that's how we get our cool patterns. Now I'm going to take a little bit of blue. I'm going to put it on this side and let that bleed into my other colors. Maybe I'll put some here. Now remember, the type of paper that you have is going to change the result of the pattern you have. This is a textured paper, so it's a little bit harder for that crayon to get into the nook and crannies of the paper. If you use a construction paper, it's going to turn out completely different. Now I'm going to mix in some purple. I love purple. Purple is my favorite color. I'm sticking with cool colors for this one. In the ornament, you could do warm colors. So cool colors are blue, green, purple, and then warm colors are red, yellow, orange. If you get puddles, you can take your brush. Now this is a cheapy brush, so it doesn't do quite as well as regular brushes. I'm going to soak up some of that excess water in here, just so it doesn't pool too much. Now if you want to create a cool effect, this kind of fun, almost looks frosted effect, you can add salt into your ornament or into your background. You're going to let that dry, you're going to let that soak up, and then when it's dry, you're going to brush this off into the trash. Should take about, I would say, 10-20 minutes, depending on how humid your house is. So now I'm going to decide what other colors I want to do in here. Maybe I'll do a purple right here. And right here. Important thing to remember about watercolor is the more water you add, the more transparent or see-through it's going to be. So if you want a more vivid color, you're going to use less water. I'm going to add some blue in here. And remember, it's important to have clean water because that water is going to tint the color of your paint. I'm going to go in and do my background while this is drying up here. We can always add more layers. I think I want a red background. Now this red is a more orange color. It's a warmer red. It's not a cool red. What they would call a fire red. And you see when I get close to areas with paint, that paint is going to bleed in. So you have to be very careful when you get to those areas. And be mindful of your brush strokes. I'm going in kind of a curved around the ornament way. Try to keep my brush strokes very similar. Because when it dries, you're going to be able to see some of those. Now you don't have to do this all one color. You could do pine needles in the background. You could do stripes. You could do a pattern in the oil pastel or the crayon. It's all up to your creativity. Right now I'm just using, I think it's a Prang, Prang brand washable watercolor. Nothing fancy. You don't have to buy expensive watercolors to make art. If you're just learning, cheap is okay. There will be differences in how things blend together. There will be differences in if it is able to stand up to the test of time. Some of these are not light fast, which means if you were to put this in a window, it would bleach in extended time. So you have to be careful of that. If you want this to last forever, then you can buy something expensive that has light fastness. A lot of times the neon colors might not be neon or light fast, so you have to check on the side of the paint whether or not the paint you are using is light fast safe. So I want to create kind of a vignette. So I'm going to go through with my brown, blend it in, and it has to be wet for this to do this. If you do this on dry paint, it's not going to blend in as nice. It's not going to bleed. But if you like that, then do that. You could also do this with a different color. You don't have to do it with brown. You could again do the salt trick back here if you wanted to while it's still wet. Give it some visual interest. You don't have to if you don't want to. Let's see what this does with green. Again, this will dry differently once everything is dry and comes together. It's going to dry darker, more transparent. So you want to be mindful of that when you go to do this. Generally, you don't want to mix red and green together unless you're doing it on purpose. You can use red to tone down a green, green to tone down a red if you want to. If you push too hard on this, you're going to make your paper really velvety. and you don't want that. You're gonna tear through your paper. It's gonna look weird. Light, dainty strokes. Again, this is a great project for beginners, for kids. Okay. I'm gonna add a little blue to create a shadow down here. No purple in this one. I'll let that dry. Okay, so we've let that dry. We kind of removed the salt. You can kind of see the texture pattern there. Now, if you have a silver pen, or gel pen, gold gel pen, any kind of colored gel pen, you can go in, create some decorations in there if you want to. You can go ahead and do all sorts of fun stuff with that. I'm gonna take a little bit of gold. I'm gonna paint it on top of this area. It's okay if you go over anything, you can always go back over with pen. This is liquid Blick watercolor in metallic gold. I did not mix any water with this. It is already pretty transparent as it is, so I don't want to lose that gold by adding water to it. Let that dry for a little bit. Now for this paint, you're gonna want to add a couple layers because this is just so transparent. Going back in with swirls, you don't have to. You could do this with the white oil pastel again. You could paint over this if you wanted to. Anytime we go towards the edge, we're going to pretend that it comes off the edge and comes around. So we'll pretend that there's a swirl there, come in, and then there's another swirl there. Gonna make sure that I let that dry, and I'll go in with another coat. You could take glue, like Elmer's glue, do a swirl, cover it with glitter, let it dry. Looks like I got a thumbprint right here from where I was holding my paper. Just go in, add a little bit more paint there. That's why it's important to tape it down so you're not holding it with your hands. Okay, I'm gonna let that dry. While that dries, I have some white paint, and I have this back of my brush. I'm gonna dip my back of my brush into the paint. Add snowflakes. Very carefully. You can add as many or as little as you want. I'm going to stay away from that green area just because it's still wet. You can go in and add some more once that is dry. You could even use a toothpick for this if you want. Bigger the back of the brush, the bigger the snowflake is going to be. Make sure you wash off that back of your brush so you don't get paint all over you. So now I'm going to go in and go back over some of these swirls. Then I'm going to go in with a little bit of black. Just define this a little bit more. You don't have to do that if you like the way it looks already. And let it dry for a little bit. Take my white paint again, and maybe I'll make some special snowflakes here, just like that. Now you could even scan this in and then, you know, edit it up a little bit, crop it, and send this to be printed as a Christmas card. So that way you can have your own homemade Christmas cards. That would be fun. And then you don't have the embarrassment of having the same holiday cards as your friends and family. And you can say, hey, I made this. This is one of a kind. Limited edition. So we have these fun snowflakes in there. You could add tiny swirls. And maybe one over here. Oop, too big, that's okay. We don't have Photoshop, but we can cut that right off if we don't like it. Going back, bringing some elements back. Just thinking about what else I want to add. So what I went in and decided to do was make some marks with a pen. I went in and add some spirals and maybe some squiggles down here on the bottom and the sides, which is really fun. I like to make my paintings loose. Any adjustments you like and let it dry. You can mount it on cardstock or a card construction paper, frame it, gift it, hang it on your wall as decor. I hope you liked this project. Thank you so much for joining me, and happy holidays from Studio 23.